So let's jump into it. I have a couple of observations. First off, and I'm going to be real clear about this stuff, I and others have said more to condemn violence perpetrated by people who broke away from the peaceful group on January 6th, more than the left has ever said, ever, about the year-plus long parade of horribles, assaults, murders, attacks by their violent fellow ideologues. The left trying to hold January 6th as in any way comparative to the years of lawless violence, that, ladies and gentlemen, just so you know, and so everyone else listening will know, is the original whataboutism. People who refuse accountability and they sanction with silence all of the acts of violence. Would you like to talk about those? Because I'm ready to discuss them. I've got video, I got pictures, city after city after city after city after city. I mean, so much. Oh, and the left is mad at me today. Don't care, never have. So here's the thing. Republicans, you know what? Why not have a press conference and why not have the officers from Chicago? I can't play any of this audio that I have from a video that I got here. I got officers trying to hold the line in front of businesses that, and here's the funny thing, mostly white Antifa people are trying to loot. A video that I'm looking at, oh, you're going to see it. You're going to get the email tonight. Never fear. Where I'm looking at rioters who are calling the black officers there standing in front of the stores in predominantly minority neighborhoods, I'll have you know, facing off against mostly white trust fund socialists that are Antifa, and the black officers are being slurred. I have actually several videos like that. Thank you. I'm just wondering if those officers were ever invited by Nancy Pelosi and her Victorian freak show, that is the commission running this hearing, if any of them were ever invited to talk about how they were racially slurred for trying to protect businesses in minority neighborhoods. No, I don't think they were they? What about one of the very beginning, one of the first, this was in Ohio. I'm watching video of Antifa and BLM throwing chunks of rocks and bashing cops in the heads with stones. Or, I also have the Grant Park protest too, where there were police that were there just keeping the peace. They were attacked by Antifa. What about St. John's Church in D.C., when you had rioters who set a church on fire, defaced property, threatened police? There was a new study that Town Hall noted where it says hundreds of BLM protests actually turned violent. This idea that these were mostly peaceful protests is a lie. This idea that they didn't do anything and that these violent protests from the year plus had no impact and there was no damage is a lie. In fact, it was set to be estimated at over $2 billion. I have video after video after video. The study, which I will also helpfully link for you. A lot of people on the left won't read this because there's multiple pages and there's mostly text and not pictures. But I have all kinds of, it doesn't matter. Here's the thing. It doesn't matter whether or not you're talking about a situation that occurred and the outrage is justified or not. Violence, and this is where I and all of you are consistent, whereas our brethren on the left are not. Violence and arson and all of these things, these are not forms of protected speech. That's just all there is to it. Just video after video after video after video. What about in Philly? They had to deploy other police officers. This was October 27th, 2020, Reuters, because cops had been circled by rioters and they were actually fearing for their safety. I'm watching a video of an officer being attacked by rioters right now. I'm also watching fires being set to things. Julio Rosas was there. This was after Walter Wallace was armed with a knife, and it was a justifiable shooting by police. He's taking video footage of all the damage from the arson and the looting. A Foot Locker was looted. All these businesses were damaged. They were everything taken from them. What about the story of David Dorn? This wasn't too far from where I used to live in St. Louis. David Dorn on the night of hell in St. Louis City, where rioters set fire to buildings. I had friends that had some of their stuff stored in the warehouse portion of a building. This was in downtown St. Louis, not far from Washington Avenue, and the building was set on fire. No, David Dorn, upstanding member of the community, family man, well respected by everyone on the right and left. I knew who he was even before this happened. He was murdered outside of Lee's Pawn and Jewelry. The owner of Lee's Pawn and Jewelry had asked David if he wouldn't mind kind of doing security at his store. And because they saw the riots, they saw everything that was happening. They didn't want to end up being looted. And so David Dorn went, and predictably, some of the rioters came looking for trouble. David Dorn, trained police captain, retired, understood de-escalation tactics, understood all of that. But it doesn't matter to people who are there to cause and raise hell. And so he was trying to keep people from breaking into the store. He stepped outside. He was on the sidewalk, and there he was murdered. He fell down, bled out on the sidewalk, his eyes open, face up. Rioters tried to rob his body. And there was only one person there who also was live streaming, but only one person fought off the people trying to rob him and said, stay with me, help is on the way. And the sickening, as if that couldn't even be more sickening, David Dorn's grandson happened to be online, and he was watching different live streams of the rioting and the damage and the arson and the looting and the aftermath. And he stumbled across the live stream of his dying grandfather bleeding to death on a sidewalk in front of Lee's Pawn and Jewelry on a late night in St. Louis City. He didn't have anyone there to see him out, except for a man standing over him who realized the gravity of the situation. For all the names that I hear about Brian Sicknick, it's amazing how the left can't bring themselves to form the words David Dorn. And he wasn't the only officer that's been murdered in riots. I'll share with you the other names of officers. Since the left wants to wrap themselves in the thin blue line, let's talk about that. Since the left wants to wrap themselves in justice, let's talk about the women who were beaten in the street by Antifa and BLM simply because they tried to protect their businesses. Let's talk about the children who were trapped in the burning apartment buildings set by rioters who then blocked emergency responders. And only after emergency responders and other law enforcement got a little violent and shoved through did they save those kids that were almost murdered by rioters. Or we could talk about how rioters tried to murder police by sealing them in the room and setting the building on fire. You know, since the left wants to wrap themselves in the thin blue line. Like I said, and I've said this quite frequently, this idea that pointing out this year of violence is in any way whataboutism, and it was longer than that, especially when I and others have done more to condemn violence, than anyone on the left has ever done? No. No, the left trying to uphold 1/6 as in any way comparative. That's the original whataboutism.